Our scripture reading comes from the book of Psalms, Psalm 8. I invite you to read it together. Let's read God's good word together. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them, mortals that you care for them? This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. Think of a time whenever you have seen a sight that took your breath away, that brought you into just a different state of consciousness. Whenever you realized you were in the midst of something bigger than the world that you had just inhabited a few moments earlier. Those moments of just almost transcendence, of being lost in wonder. Do you wish you had more of those moments in your life? I know I do. They seem a little bit too far apart. But one of the ways that we try to put ourselves in a position to experience that in our family is going to national parks. Those are some of our favorite places. We try to hit a few every year. And this year we went to Capitol Reef National Park in kind of south central Utah. And it was just this amazing experience. It's such a unique geological area. It's called the water pocket fold, where different layers of the earth literally folded up under pressure. And you can see, just this amazing, you can literally see like the history of the world, different levels of geology is the different strata of rock. You see the different colors. Those are just come from different times and different layers that built up and then hardened into rock over time. And the landscape was just phenomenal. It was, if there weren't trees, you could have told me I was walking on Mars and I would have believed you, except for I didn't travel to Mars. So I would have known something was off. It was a long drive, but not that long. But we just saw these amazing things and these beautiful canyons. And they have these amazing slot canyons that we got to walk in, just hundreds of feet tall. And there's Courtney and Elsie walking. But just one of our favorite places, and those moments of wonder, whenever you see something and you realize, wow, like all of the things that I'm typically concerned about feel small compared to what's right in front of me. And for you, maybe it's not nature. You experience that whenever you hold a newborn baby and just the amazing wow. And if the baby is yours, it's wow, I've got to take care of this now. Like there's another level to it. And sometimes it's just whenever you see someone who's just excellent at their craft, whenever you see a musician who just can do things that are beyond, it just makes you say, wow, it's a sense of wonder. That's what we're talking about. That's a key part of what it means to be human. And in this sermon series, we're talking about how can we become human again? How can we be fully awake and fully alive, particularly in a world where it seems like technology is infiltrating more and more of our lives by the day, where it's just everywhere. And we just say yes, because why not? Because this will probably make my life a little bit easier. I know I think that. And then I realized whenever I got an iPhone almost 20 years ago, there have been costs associated with that, right? I've paid a lot of attention to things that I ought not to. I never knew that I would measure the amount of cat videos watched in hours. Like that seemed like a seconds kind of thing, but over the years, it adds up. And there are a lot of things that I wish I'd paid more attention to that I did not. There's a cost. And so we're asking, how can we stop paying that cost and become more fully human? How can we become the kind of people that God created us to be? Because God did not create us for the subhuman existence that we so often settle for. And I know sometimes you experience that. I feel that often in my bones, that there's got to be more than this. When you get to the end of a day and you know you were busy the entire time and yet it's hard to actually point to, did I actually accomplish anything? Did anything that I do actually matter besides a bunch of people got their emails sent back to them with an answer that they may or may not have liked? Is this it really? We wonder that. And Wendell Berry puts a really fine point on it. He says, it's easy for me to imagine the next great division of the world will be between people who wish to live as creatures and people who wish to live as machines. And if you were wondering, we were made to be creatures, right? We were made by the Creator to be creatures. And it's great to be efficient. It's great to be able to expand your capacities. But if we become machines, then we become something that we were not created to be. And so we've got to be really careful about that. And the beautiful thing that whenever we are present, whenever we're aware of what's going on, we see that God shows up in our lives right where we are, right here and right now. Not where we wish we were, not where we would like to be in a few years or where we'll be whenever we finally get our act together. God shows up right where we are, in the midst of the difficulty, in the midst of the brokenness, in the midst of the busyness, in the midst of it all, right where you are. And yet we've got to wake up to be able to see it. I love the story of Jacob whenever he's on the run after stealing his older brother's birthright and then decides he should not hang out with his older brother after that. You know, whenever you steal your brother's inheritance, maybe don't hang around him for a while. Maybe don't steal their inheritance in the first place, but that ship sailed for Jacob. But he has this vision of God while he's asleep. He's sleeping outside and he wakes up and he says, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it." And we could say that about every moment of our lives. Every moment, God is in the same place that you are, and yet so seldom are we aware of it. And so this is the promise. We don't have to sleepwalk through life. Jesus offers us the life that were made for. And that's what we're talking about today. And particularly, we were made for wonder. We were made for a sense of awe. That's our natural response to being creatures of our Creator. But most of us don't find ourselves there very often. Where we actually find ourselves is we are overstimulated and underawed. There's a lot of stimulation, but not a lot of awe in our lives. We are just busy, and you all know this, but we are the most entertained people in the history of the world. You know, the kind of entertainment that we have access to, it used to really be like you had to be like a king or a queen or nobility to be able to experience that, and now I can entertain myself 24/7. I think it was Neil Postman wrote "Entertaining Ourselves to Death." He wrote that like 30 years ago. He was talking about TV, and you just wonder, like, Neil, like, what do you think about today? And I don't actually want to know. That would be a super depressing book to read. Entertaining Ourselves to Death to the internet. Like, no thanks. But that's what we experience, and we're used to the constant stimulation. But whenever that's what we're used to, nothing seems exceptional, right? If you're always running at a 10 out of 10, like nothing can actually get your attention because you just keep the stimuli going. And you come to a gap and it's like, okay, I've got to start a podcast. And then you come to another gap and it's like, okay, I just got to start scrolling. And then, okay, come to another gap. All right, I'll check my email again, right? It's just this constant stimulation. And yet nothing can shake us out of that whenever that's taking all of our focus. And if we ever want to experience elevation, we have to rest from input, right? If you're running at 10 all the time, you have to let it go down if you want to actually go up again. Otherwise, it's, you might call it flatlining. That's what we experience, but it's just constant stimulation. This is what Tish Harrison Warren writes. She's one of my favorite writers. "The constant noise and connectivity of online life kills our capacity for wonder and astonishment, for listening to what stalks the silences," right? How would we hear it? We don't ever have time for silence. "If we want to become people able to attend to those things that are deepest and most real, we have to intentionally rewire our brains to sober up our drunken minds and to break our addiction to distraction," right? I mean, if you've lived through the last 20 years, like probably, if you've lived through the last year, I probably don't have to explain that, like you get that. We need that. And that's what wonder does for us. It connects us to something greater than ourselves. It connects us to something that's greater than on the screen. And whenever we don't have that, the absence of wonder, it isolates us from anything greater than ourselves. And then we're the ones who have to fill the void. I mean, that's really the thing. If we don't recognize that we're part of something greater, then we've got to make ourselves greater. And that's the pressure that it puts on us. And if we don't regain that capacity for wonder, then we'll miss the miracles that are right in front of us. Because they are every single day. There are miracles happening right in our midst. But so often we miss them because we don't have eyes to see. But that's what we were made for. We were made for wonder. And you don't have to look far to see this. All you have to do is look at all of the kids who are gathered here. Children have a natural capacity for wonder. And if you pay very much attention, you'll notice they just have this ability to be captivated by almost anything. And if you go to my car in the back seat, you'll notice a collection of sticks and rocks and oddly shaped pieces of mulch because they're all fascinating. And so we have to keep them all. Never mind that we're never actually going to look at them again. We've got to keep them, and throwing them away would be disastrous. Anyway, not that I have strong feelings about this, but my children see these things and they're just captivated by them. And this year we're trying something new. Our kids have never played t-ball before, so we're doing that. That's Cece. And mostly I signed her up just so I could take pictures like that with a pink bat and a pink glove. The playing is incidental to the photos. But you can see that's her team on the field. She's right here in the pink hat. You can kind of see her at the, they don't really play positions. As the inning goes on, they gradually converge. But anyway, she started at shortstop. But you can tell this is the beginning of the inning. Do you know how you can tell that? They're all standing straight up and they're looking at the batter. And as the inning goes on, particularly every inning in our league, everybody bats. And so by the time you get to the end of it, like all the kids are down here and they're just playing. They are endlessly fascinated by dirt. And it is just amazing. The batter, like who cares? Like as long as you don't hit me with the ball, like whatever, I don't care. But don't mess with me while I'm trying to play with my dirt. And then the dirt's also in the dugouts. And so even whenever they're not in the field, there's plenty of dirt and they're just captivated by it. I mean, you would have to be a soil scientist to be that fascinated by dirt. It is just phenomenal. But they have this innate capacity to be captivated, right? And we get busy and we lose that. And actually, I think some of our loss of wonder is actually kind of defensiveness. It's actually a way that we protect ourselves. We begin to protect ourselves with cynicism. And we act unimpressed as a defense mechanism. And if you have ever been a teenager, as I was once, and it's growing more and more distant, but I was there once, and like you see stuff, and your parents tell you something, you're like, so, right? I mean, have you ever said that? None of y'all have said that. You're more mature than I was, I'm sure. But it's just like you don't want to be seen caring about something that you ought not to care about. And that doesn't change whenever we're adults. We still protect ourselves. We don't want to be too impressed because that might make us vulnerable. And actually, if we go back to the beginning, if we go back to creation, what we see is a portrait of humanity as unguarded and open. There wasn't any self-protection going on. And so this is what we read in Genesis chapter 2. And the man and the wife were both naked and were not ashamed. And you're like, okay, where are we going with this? But whenever you read that verse, that wasn't primarily about whether or not they were wearing clothes. It was about a sense of they did not feel threatened. They were who they were, and they were okay with that. They weren't worried about that. They were able to be open about who they were and about being themselves. There was no need for self-protection. And yet as we age, then we become scared. We become worried. We recognize that we need to protect ourselves. And that's what's going on. But we lose something significant. And the great psychologist Abraham Maslow, this is what he says about wonder. He says, the most fortunate are those who have a wonderful capacity to appreciate again and again, freshly and naively, we usually use that word negatively, he uses it positively, the basic goods of life with awe, pleasure, wonder, and even ecstasy. The most fortunate people are the people who are able to enjoy the basic things of life over and over again. I'm guessing a few of you had coffee this morning. Do you do that often? Like, yes, or else you'll get a terrible headache because you're addicts like me. We like our coffee, but I wonder, how often do you actually enjoy it? And you think of someone who has their coffee and then goes on autopilot because they're scrolling the news and reading about all the terrible things that are happening in the world. And then think of someone else who is able to just sit and drink, and it's the same coffee they have every day, and they just are mesmerized by it. Which one would you rather be? Now, we would make fun of the person as wow, is that coffee good this morning? Do you really like your coffee? I mean, that's the kind of things, can you imagine going into your workplace and being wowed by your coffee? What would your coworkers say? We would make fun of that person. But whose life would you rather have? The person who's never tasted their coffee because they're so distracted, or the person who is amazed by it day after day? Would you rather be the person who makes fun of the person who's really enjoying their life? I mean, that's a lot of times we fall there. That's not how I want to live my life now that I think about it. But the ability to just experience wonder at all of the things, because wonder is the natural response of the creature to the works of the Creator. As people who are created by God, our natural response to the things that God has made is wonders, that sense of wow, oh my goodness, God, you are so amazing, and these things you have done, this thing you've made, or the way that you have made us, it is amazing. The fact that you created this bean that we can then grind and soak in water, and then we get to taste this, like proof that God exists and wants us to be happy, at least for some of us. And just the ability to say, wow, that's our natural state. And we see this throughout the scriptures. Whenever Moses is walking and he sees the bush is burning but not consumed, he doesn't like flip to the next video, right? I mean, he is amazed, and God tells him, take off your shoes and because you're on holy ground, and he kneels down and bows because he's afraid, because he feels this sense of fear and awe. That's actually the sense of wonder is like a combination of fear and ecstasy, is what psychologists say. It's those two things that come together. And this is how people respond whenever they encounter Jesus. It's the sense of wonder. And one of the stories that we read early on in the Gospel of Mark is the story of, maybe you remember, Jesus is teaching in a house and it's completely full. And so some friends are trying to get their friend healed by Jesus, but they can't get to him because it's so crowded. And so they take the thatching off of the roof, which, anyway, the property destruction aspect of that story has always bothered me a little bit. That's not what we're talking about this morning. But they lower him down so that Jesus can heal him, and Jesus forgives his sins, and everyone's like, wait a second, like only God can do that. But then this is how the story concludes. Jesus says, I say to you, stand up, take your mat, and go home. And the man stood up and immediately took the mat and went out before all of them, so that they were all amazed and glorified God, saying, we have never seen anything like this. That is their response to experiencing God's power in Jesus. They are amazed. They said, we've never seen anything like this. And what happens in those moments, whenever we experience those moments of awe, we realize we are part of something that's much bigger than ourselves. Maybe you think about going out, particularly if you get out away from light pollution and looking up into the sky, and just this amazing sense of like, I'm seeing things that happen in some cases hundreds, thousands, millions of years ago, and the light is just reaching our planet. You know, in some cases, you're seeing the very beginning of the universe and seeing the vastness of it, and the Milky Way, and all of the things in the sky, and you just feel so small, right? You realize this is a big universe. And the problems that I usually get obsessed with on the universal scale, like they don't rate particularly high, right? But this is the sense, and this is what we read in the psalm. This is what the psalmist says, O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You've set your glory above the heavens. Whenever we look into the sky, we see a reflection of the glory of God. And here's the really counterintuitive thing. Instead of feeling sad at our smallness, we feel content and secure at our proper place in the world. I don't know about you, but whenever I look at the stars, I'm not like, oh, I'm just like a piece of dust. Like, I don't matter at all. Who cares? Like, I'm going to go in. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And what actually happens is like you feel smaller, but that pressure that we feel whenever we have to be the biggest part of our lives, it's relieved. Like, I don't have to take up all of this space anymore. I don't have to make myself great because God is already, like, God takes care of the greatness. That's not my job anymore. I'm a part of this amazing universe, and I don't have to feel sad. I don't know, is that your experience whenever you look up at the stars? Are you sad? Like, I'm amazed. I recognize my smallness. And that's the experience that the psalmist has. He says, when I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals that you care for them. You're just looking and seeing all of this amazingness that's in the sky and thinking like, we're tiny, and yet you care for us. And that's the amazing thing. And in the next verse, he goes on to say, and yet you've made them a little bit lower than God. Despite our smallness, God cares intimately for us. And here's the thing, whenever we recognize our place in God's universe, we no longer have to make ourselves the center. We see, oh yeah, God's the center of the universe. It's not me. All of my concerns, no, I don't have to take care of it all. God has got it. God's keeping all of the stars in the sky. God's keeping the planets in orbit. Like, I don't have to take care of everything. God has got it. And when we're freed from that pressure to make ourselves great, we can enjoy the wonders of God's world. We can step back from all of our concerns, and some of them are significant. I'm certainly not downplaying the troubles that we have, but we can step back from them and we can say, wow, we can enjoy the glory of God's creation. This is what the writer David Benner says about what wonder does for us. He says it enlarges us and draws us out of our self-preoccupation. It attunes us to the sacramental majesty of the world. It softens the ego and creates space within us for awe, surprise, and reverence in the face of the mystery of what is. It is therefore the natural source of prayer. Because whenever we experience that wonder and that awe, we naturally are drawn into praising the one who created the things that bring us into that state of mind in the first place. We just have to say wow, which is a beautiful one-word prayer. And often it leads to thanks. It leads to thanks and praising God, praising God's goodness. And that can actually, stepping into the natural world can actually be a really powerful way of starting your day. And particularly whenever we're used to starting our day with immediately checking our devices in case we miss something important, right? I do that too. And then I find my way to cat videos. And I don't know how I got there from this is important. I just use that as an example. I don't actually watch cat videos. But anyway, just in case you thought I was weird about cat videos, I'm not. It's just an example. But anyway, so this Andy Crouch actually is a just fantastic thinker and writer. He talks about the challenge of recognizing that he was starting every day, asking his phone in essence who he was. And so I'm going to show you a video. He's going to talk about his experience. Take a look.
So I decided that every day, after making my tea, there's one habit I'm not going to give up, which is tea first. But I'd take my tea outside and just walk out the front door, stand outside just for a few moments, and just experience whatever the day had for me before I turned to the glowing rectangle. And the first 2 weeks that I was trying this, every day was a ridiculous spiritual battle. Like, this is not a complicated thing to do. And yet every morning it was like this phone, I could almost sense like a voice calling to me from the little phone. Don't you need to check me? Don't you want to try me? And I'd have to resist and say, no, get behind me. I'm going outside first. 2 weeks in, I heard the voice, just like the days before, but something absolutely flipped. And instead of feeling temptation and allure, all I felt was revulsion and repulsion. Like, why would I invest in you this most beautiful first moment of my day, rather than go out and be a creature in God's creation? And ever since I've done this, it is one of the most spiritually transformative things I've done with my life, probably in the last 10 years, maybe embarrassingly. Just step outdoors, whatever the weather is, wherever I am in the world. Sometimes I walk down flights and flights of stairs if I'm staying in a hotel or something, and just spend a moment being who I really am, which is a very small part of a very large world, rather than what I am on the screen, which is a very large part of a very small world. And it's been a gift to choose to be who I really am. And that's what our disciplines are for. That's what the real rule is for, is to choose to be who I know I am and want to be.
Isn't that amazing? I love the way he puts that. My screen tells me that I'm a very big part of a very small world. And yet whenever I go into creation, it tells me I'm a very small part of a very large world. And the amazing thing is, being a big part of a small world, it makes me anxious. And whenever I'm a small part of a big world, it brings me peace. Isn't that amazing? And that's what wonder can do for us. And so what we want to do is we want to open ourselves to wonder, open ourselves to experiencing God's goodness and God's vastness and our proper place in relationship to God. Now, we can't make ourselves feel wonder any more than we can make ourselves feel any emotion. Although I think we know how to make ourselves mad, like you just scroll and read things that the people you don't like said online. So maybe that's one emotion that we can control, but the good ones are somewhat harder to come by. Like, we can't just make ourselves feel that, but we can open ourselves to them. We can prepare the way so that we're ready whenever those moments come. And here's what gets in the way. We can't experience wonder if we're constantly busy. This is what David Benner says again. He says, wonder seldom emerges in a life that is crammed with work, people, words, and noise, because it always starts with noticing something in a fresh way. Wonder requires enough time to allow us to pay attention and enough stillness to allow what we encounter to have its wondrous impact on our souls. So if we want to experience something, then if we want to experience wonder, we've got to slow down, right? Has anyone really appreciated a sunset in a hurry? Like, okay, that's nice, and then it made a lasting imprint on your soul as you rush to the next thing? That's not how it works. You have to stop. You have to turn your feet and actually look and let it soak in. And so we've got to slow down. And as we've been talking about throughout the sermon, one of the most direct gateways to wonder is nature. because we see the glory of the Creator in creation. And so, one of the ways that you can do that, I think, is getting out into the wilderness. And so that's a photo that Courtney took in Arches National Park, which is just beautiful. It lives up to the name. They've got a lot of arches in the park. They chose the name well. But that's our campsite. We had to lighten it so that you could see the stars. We did not have a spotlight in our tent, if you're wondering. That just is what we had to do to make it look. But just like seeing the stars, whenever Courtney would take Cece into the tent and try to start her getting to bed, and Elsie and I would sit out and just look at the Milky Way, and it was just fantastic, and just brought us into a sense of awe. You can see there a sunrise hike at Broken Arch, and this one is Double Arch, because there are two. I know. But, just these amazing things, like how is that piece of rock standing? Like, how did the rest of it fall? And there was a geological explanation that I could have read back to you 5 minutes after I read it, and I've lost it, but I've retained the sense of wonder. And here's the thing, though. Getting away helps. There's something about being removed from our environment that helps us experience that, but you don't have to go into the wilderness to experience awe. You can do it right where you are. And so we live in a neighborhood that has a pond and a green belt. Maybe you live in a neighborhood like that. I thought it was cool that we had a pond, and then you realize, every neighborhood in Edmond has a pond, and then you realize, it's because you have to have it for drainage. And so it's all about the runoff, which, I don't know, brings down the romance for me a little bit. So this is not like it's like the thing that we built that looks natural, but even in this not super wilderness place, I still see new life whenever I go out on walks. And this is actually a photo Courtney took of new ducklings in our neighborhood. And if you're more of a goose person, we had goslings as well. I stay way away from mom and dad when I'm walking by the geese. I do not like that. The hissing. Did you know geese hiss? That's another, how exactly? Anyway. But, and then I think those are goslings as well. But I just, whenever I walk through my neighborhood through this not particularly natural setting, but in the outdoors, I still feel this sense of kinship. My spirits are elevated just by being close to creation, just by being close to other creatures. And it doesn't have to be nature either, where we can experience wonder through art, through creativity, through kindness of other people. And maybe you've experienced this. You encounter a stranger at the store who goes out of their way to do something kind for you, and it's just like this moment of wow, why would somebody do this? And yet this person has been so kind. Last week, I think I was checking on the girls before I went to bed. They've been in bed for a while, but I went in and was leaning in to give Elsie a kiss goodnight, and just she was barely awake, and just her arm just reached up and put itself around my neck. And it was just a moment of wonder. The thing I do every night is put the girls to bed and check on them before I go to sleep. And in that moment, this little arm puts her arm around me and just lets me know that I'm loved. And I just find myself caught in wonder, why did I get to be this girl's dad? Why is this? And then I can't go back to an hour earlier whenever I was frustrated because bedtime was not going as planned. But just this ordinary moment brings wonder up. It's what we experience. And the poet Elizabeth Barrett Browning, she puts it like no one else can. She says, "Earth is crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. But only he who sees takes off his shoes. The rest sit round and pluck blackberries." Now, nothing against blackberries, right? Love a good blackberry. Whenever there is a burning bush in your midst, you better take off your shoes. I think that's the 19th century equivalent to scrolling on your phone. Anyway, I'm not sure. But earth is crammed with heaven. Only the one who has eyes to see can see it. But that's what we can see whenever we look up and experience the world that God has made. So here are a few action steps I want to invite you to take with me this week. First, I want to just invite you to do what Andy Crouch talked about. Start your day by spending time outside and leave your phone inside. One of the perks of this is it's the only time that you can be outside most days and not immediately start sweating. And so it's a great time to go outside. But just being in the stillness, wherever you live, can just give you a moment of setting yourself as a creature so that you enter your day remembering who you are and not what your phone tells you you are. And then as you experience moments of wonder and awe, whether they're big or whether they're small, let those draw you into prayer of gratitude and praise. And it might just be saying the word, wow, thank you. God, you're good. This is amazing. But let those moments draw you up to give thanks to the Creator who has made you in such an amazing way, in such an amazing world. That's what we read in the psalm. That's what David says. It concludes the same way that it begins, and it's the thing that we feel whenever we experience those moments of wonder. O Lord, our sovereign, how majestic is your name in all the earth. Will you pray with me? God, we thank you for this wonderful world that you've created and for the universe beyond it, the stars in the sky and galaxies and things that we can barely comprehend. And yet, even in the midst of all of it, despite our smallness, you care for us. So God, help us to open ourselves to your wonder. Help us to experience your awe, and help us to experience the wonder of your goodness that we experience in Jesus, who gave himself for us. And as he taught us, so we pray together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.